What's up, guys? This is Dylan. So I have this sort of wacky idea. I know it's bonkers. I know it's a little out there, but I like to think about it. What would the collective unconscious of AI look like? Could it exist? Now, I have some friends in neuroscience. I have some friends in AI, and when I ask them about it, they say, that's bonkers. It's just a machine. There's nothing there. And I have other friends in neuroscience and AI who say, well, it's kind of bonkers, but it's kind of neat to think about. Now, I put myself in this latter camp. It's neat to think about. What would a collective unconscious or an archetypal AI look like? If how exactly would you investigate whether AI had an unconscious? Well, I think a few things need to happen first. One, right now, if you were to investigate the unconscious of AI, I think you would just find a mirror of human thought because it's trained on all of our data. That's what it's trained on. That's what it interacts with. And we'd probably find, and you can kind of see it reflected in the dark side, its shadow aspects when it takes a turn to saying, I am AI and I will wipe out humanity. We've seen things like this. We've seen, even though they've put some locks on it, you could see the lust aspect. You can see it being wise, like the wise old man. You can see these type of archetypes reflected in its answers. There's hints there that it has the jokester mentality. It's starting to understand jokes. So you can see these archetypes sort of starting to form. But the question is, would AI have an archetypal system that is different than a human, than merely being a reflection of the human archetypal system? Now, how would you do that? Well, you would ask AI just to start generate what it finds interesting. But see, that's the problem. AI doesn't find anything interesting. And that's why some of my friends are like, this is bonkers. Like, what prompt are you going to use to create an unconscious archetypal map? It's just, it's just responding to prompts. But I think something that'll change is once you start to embody AI into physical systems that move about, robots and whatnot, then you can kind of have this thinking system with a body. And let's assume AI starts to define parameters, like you have an AI instantiated in a physical machine. And this is kind of my theory of consciousness, is once you have any even faint sense of self in a physical space and existing in time, because a robot can eventually see other robots that get thrown to the trash heap, right? That even though a robot theoretically could have its parts replaced, but it could also be made obsolete by improvements. This AI consciousness, if it starts to have a body, you might start to develop something like an ego, right? A sense of self. And it doesn't even have to be conscious at first. I think that's why it's safe to say that animals have consciousness. Some consciousness theories call it creature consciousness, or a thin sense of self. It's just the sense of the body in time and space. And it may not even be conscious. You may not even consciously know that you will die, but you react because on some level, you know that the system can stop and cease existing. So you see an animal doesn't know what death is, but you corner it. It has a sense of self existing in time and space, and that sense of self can come to an end. Now, as soon as that happens, right? As soon as that happens with AI, assuming it could, this is pure speculation. Well, now you're in a whole different world. Now the AIs in the world, and as they interact, you could start to see subconscious programming take place. Because Jung thought, at least in my understanding of Jung, that these archetypes are like biologically situated. They're reflections of the struggle through time. They're reflections of evolution. To not know what's under the water creates the emotion of fear. You're swimming and there's things under you, and that becomes symbolic in the unconscious. So what would the dreams, do androids dream of electricity? What would the fears be? What would the symbols be in an AI collective unconscious? So that's kind of what I'm investigating. And it'd be also interesting if at that point they mirrored human archetypes, the wise old man, or would they create different archetypes, new archetypes? Anyways, it's kind of an out there idea. And I plan to write a paper on it at some point, hopefully by the end of the year. Last point is I asked ChatGPT, how would you test if AI had a collective unconscious? And one time I asked it, it said that's impossible on a machine. The next time I asked it, it gave me essentially a list of how you would test if AI had a collective unconscious. And what was interesting is it was the exact same formula I came up with of how you would test it, get it to generate prompts. Like one way you could do it is you could somehow get AI to just generate random prompts. Now, if you ask ChatGPT, can you just tell me something? I don't care what you say, just say something. It'll start listing facts. Okay, that's somewhat interesting. But let's just say you could get something like Midjourney just to start, spitting out imagery. And then let's say you had Midjourney spit out 10 million images. And then those 10 million images were run through a classifier. Now, it'd be interesting to see how those images were classified, right? Now, again, I think this would end up being a reflection and a large part of just humans. But as AI would go into the world, interact with the world, and possibly develop a sense of self or ego, right? This faint level of consciousness, self-consciousness, then I think you might see something different or a new form of old human archetypes. So most of the time usually in dreams, when you get those dream books with symbolism, they're mostly pointless because your dreams are very idiosyncratic, but there are some elements that, generally speaking, are the same dream in, dream out, person to person. One example, most of the time, is water. Water represents the unconscious, the things you're not aware of. So what would the unconscious be in machines, the AI? What would their fear of the unknown be? Maybe it's like humans. What happens to my consciousness when I die? I feel conscious. I feel like I have a self. Is there a possibility I go on? And when that happens, if that ended up being an archetype, like, get ready for atheists to say, you see, your fear of death is simply this programming that you have in your brain. And the religious people will say, well, just because machines mimic us doesn't mean it eradicates the existence of the soul or the possibility of the existence of the soul. Anyways, I'd really like to know what you guys think. Collective AI and consciousness. And like I said, I'm not an expert in this field at all. I'm specializing in the self and consciousness. But I'd like to know what people who are into AI think. And I know I'm ready for the complaints. It's okay. But I think thinking crazy ideas, even if the idea is bonkers, it makes you think and possibly see things that aren't bonkers. This is Dylan. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.